friends. Okay, so we're back. We've done all of these layers. I've come in and actually overlapped a few places where I noticed the lines were kind of close but not perfect, right? So one of the things you can do just to clean up your drawing in general is to take things like this little piece here where it should be underneath that height piece and just kind of nudge, right? I'm just holding shift and hitting arrow keys to nudge into that overlap so that the lines are all crisscrossing the way you'd want them to in a solid object. So it's kind of twitchy, and if it doesn't happen on your drawing, totally chill. I'm not gonna take points off or anything for it, but that's how when we add this together as one solid, we end up with a really clean drawing without extra sort of stray wireframe lines. So that'll be our next step, just to select this whole thing. Make sure its bottom Z is still 0. For some reason mine wasn't. Yours should not have had that issue. And then to go into model and add solids. And what that's going to do is create one solid unit that is this whole seating section piece, okay? And you'll notice I do still have some weird little bits of wireframe where, for example, I've got, steps that are hiding in the wrong places. These steps went missing when I just did that, so they must have actual different bottom Z's that I didn't take into account, right? Hopefully yours doesn't have these problems. I'm gonna fix whatever I need to fix by undoing and cleaning it up. And then we're gonna talk about adding seating. Okay, friends, now let's talk about auditorium chairs. You're gonna find them, so we may have been over in the house a minute ago. You're gonna find them in the event tools area, okay? And we're gonna use this tool called seating section. Now, I'll real quickly show you what it does in general. It might start with this paint bucket mode. We're gonna actually start with this rectangle mode. And I'm gonna just real quick show you kind of what this guy does over here, and then we can come in and I'll show you how to use it in the specific case. So the basic idea with seating section is I want to be able to drag and draw a rectangle like that, okay? And then I want to say this is a seating section that is pointing in a certain direction in, like, for example, an auditorium, a black box theater, a conference hall. So in that case, I would just point an arrow now in the direction that we're going, and Vectorworks is going to lay out a bunch of seats. It's probably going to have event chair 1 as the chair type in that direction, okay? So if you look at it now, this is what it would probably do for yours. So it'll make this array, rows and rows of chairs that are lined up together, okay? So the next step you'll do, if you're, for example, doing a conference, or if you are doing a black box and you have risers, would be to come in and have it set the chairs up a step for each row, right? And I would do that kind of over here you have both seat spacing, row spacing. So seat spacing is left to right between seats. Row spacing is depth between rows. And then rise type can either be total or per row, and the rise is like how much higher each chair is relative to the chair in front of it. So if I make the rise height 8 inches, which is kind of standard, now I have a scaled array of seats that are counted, that have seat numbers. All of that stuff can automatically happen. And this can make your life really efficient if you're like running a conference venue, or if you're reconfiguring seats in a black box theater over and over again. We are actually going to do something slightly trickier, which is these arrays of seats that are in a curved shape and that step up our risers, which are different heights at different levels. So we're gonna do 2 or maybe 3 different seating blocks for this assignment, okay? So first I'm gonna go back into top plan view, and I'm gonna just delete this rando seating section I showed you just to show you how the seating section stuff works. And we're gonna come back to the seating section tool. We're gonna come into this little pencil wrench settings, and we're going to change a few things just right off the bat because we know how our life is going to work, okay? So I'm going to switch from the event chair one, which is probably what your seating has, to seat symbols and event padded theater seat, because this is the closest to a regular theater seat situation, okay? So we'll set that first. We're then going to give ourselves, like, you can have section information, right? So if you wanted this to be the like left seating area, you can have it number the seats and rows if you want it to. All of these things are options for you, okay? You can say this is the minimum seats per row, the rows per section, the total seats, all of that stuff. If we had that information, you could plug it in here. We're not gonna worry about it. We're gonna change a couple other things, right? So one of the things I'm gonna change is this distance measurement. Right now it's back leg to front leg. I'm gonna actually change it front leg to front leg. So that means that the seats will be spaced based on the riser depth as opposed to the space between chairs. So space between chairs makes sense when you're in a conference hall. It doesn't make sense in a theater. In a theater, we want the measurement to be relative to riser depth. And I'm then going to change it to 3 feet as the row spacing, because I think that that is probably closer to what we're actually working with. Okay, great. Honestly, it may be easier to just draw a bigger rectangle and tweak the middle of the section, right? So if we go like this, we draw that nice big rectangle, we pick our arc center to be way out ahead of it. So if I click there, and then I'm like, okay, let's say that, right? Hold shift and make it curved. Now I have a lot more chairs than I need, but as I tweak my arc center, I'm gonna have enough chairs to get where I'm going, right? To actually have coverage for those seating areas. It's kind of a game. You just have to play with it until you feel like you're getting that curve where you wanted it to be. I think that's actually pretty close, okay? So now, as I nudge my seats, right, I'm able to see that the arc of the seats, and I nudge by holding shift, the arc of the seats is actually really close to the curve of this line, okay? And because I'm gonna actually use the same basic curvature later, I'm gonna real quick duplicate this seating array and move it off to the side so that I can use it again when I get to the back row. So now that I have gotten my curvature basically correct, I'm gonna come in, nudge the chairs up, oops, should select the one I'm working with, nudge the chairs up so that the backs of the chairs are overlapping the lip of each rise, and then I'm going to do some editing on the actual chairs so that we have the correct seating in the correct rows, okay? So I'm gonna double click. That's gonna let me come in here and edit rows of chairs, right? So we're definitely gonna delete that row. I think we can delete this row too, right? So that leaves the moat open. So now that I've gotten myself in a good place, right, where these are all pretty much lined up where I want them, I'm gonna exit seating. It's gonna ask us if we wanna automatically reshape the bounding box. The answer is yes. So what that'll do is reshape the seating to actually fit around the chairs we're using. Great, cool, right? So now I have chairs, they're in rows, that part is good. They need to be stepping up row by row, which they're currently not. So we're gonna add that in next, okay? So that will be in the rise, and since we have them now all selected in this one seating section, we'll change the rise, okay? We make sure that we're looking at rise type per row, and then we give it the rise value that is the height of each of these steps. So I noticed that the reason that that chair disappeared was that there's no distance past boundary, and when we added that height marker for the rise, it adjusted and deleted some chairs. I'm gonna just do a little tiny bit past the boundary there, so I just say 6 inches. It adds chairs to the equation. Then we can come in and change it to 10 inches, and you can go in and tweak that chair placement by editing your seating section one more time. So that's just kind of where it's a little twitchy, but hopefully you can play it out and it'll be great. I'm gonna do the back row now. Okay, so now that's the lower seating section. Let's do the upper seating section. We are going to look at where these chairs are lining up, and the back rows are close, right, to matching the arc. So if we line it all up, we're pretty darn close right now to these back rows fitting where they're supposed to. So I just want to make sure I'm kind of centered on the house, and then I'm going to adjust my point here a little tiny bit and try and get that arc tweaked so that my back rows are nice and clean within the guides. So this is awfully close. Okay, great. We're gonna go with it. The back row is gonna be someplace else. The front rows obviously are not gonna be part of this seating section. So now that I've gotten it so that line runs right where I want it to, I'm gonna double click. I'm gonna delete all the chairs I'm not using. Exit that seating. Yes, please. Great. So now I can just kind of nudge this up so that those overlap where they're supposed to, and we're good. Okay. If you wanted to come in and set a row of chairs behind, you could do that, and it would be pretty close to an arc, filling this back row all the way to those edges. But for our purposes, this is going to be okay. All right. Now we need to set its bottom Z and its rise, okay? So we're gonna come over here and make sure we set our bottom Z to this level of our risers, okay? So if you come over here, this level of our risers starts at 3'4". So we're gonna set our bottom Z there, 3'4". And then we're gonna set the 1 foot distance between chairs. And to make sure I don't lose chairs the way I did before, I'm again going to kind of tweak open my distance against boundary, distance past boundary guide. Ooh, too much. Command Z. Let's make it like 2 inches. I don't wanna get that extra row of chairs. I don't want it, I don't want it. We might just lose some chairs. Oh no, oh dear. I love my life. We're gonna just try adding the rise value and see what happens. Rise value, 12 inches. Yeah, totally screws us, right? Did you see that? So rude. So it has changed our boundary and it has reshaped where our rows are, which is not cute. It's not my favorite choice, but we can go in and mess with it. So what this is gonna do for us, let's delete that section. Let's duplicate that chair and place him back in between his friends and kind of tweak his angle, doing it all manually just because we kind of have to at this point, right? Sort of the only way, right? So he's kind of close to where he's supposed to be. He's not quite at the right angle he's supposed to be, but we're getting there. Right? And so that should work, we hope. Okay? Let's exit seating. See if it sticks. See if it's correct. Okay, it is. Now, the only problem I'm having is it's floating too high. And that was because it imaginarily made a new row when we added that extra front seating section. So we can just change this to 2'4". That'll take us back down a foot. And then if you zoom in, it should be sitting on the floor. Isn't that great? This is as much seating madness as I expect you to do. This is plenty. If you're only able to do the front section, it's chill, okay? Because this is, I know, kind of twitchy and obnoxious, but it is way better than placing individual chairs, truly. Especially along an arc like this. This is a really, really useful tool. So that is adding seating to your drawing. And we will then come back and I'll do the plan and section for you so that you can wrap this project up and be done. All right, thanks friends, talk to you soon.